Hello, friends. I decorate my house over a couple different seasons each year. Here I'm going through my list of different seasons and my color palettes. Now you'll see that I don't have one for Valentine's Day, but I'll be working on that. I just finished the Enchanted Forest season, and that's what I wanted to go through today, is to show you some of my decorations and some projects. Up next is Independence Day, and I've already got a really good start on that. Then we've got Mediterranean Summer, Medieval September, and finally into fall, before we go back to the top and it's Christmas again. I love to be able to change the decor in my house around and out for each season. So I have these 4 different picture ledges throughout my house, and I switch out the different photos. Actually, I have 5, but the one in my bedroom stays pretty consistent. These are the ones from my guest rooms, and I didn't get great pictures this season, but I will next. So the first project related to this kind of enchanted forest vibe I wanted to go for is some canvas shoes. I got these really cute shoes that are canvas, and I wanted to decorate them like they were elf shoes, like Lord of the Rings elven shoes. And so I took a picture of them, printed it out, and I colored it in 2 different versions because I wasn't sure which one I wanted to do until I actually drew it out and colored it. And I was like, obviously the leaves is what I wanted. I did steam the top of the shoes just to hopefully loosen them up. They were a tiny bit tight at just this one area. Next, I took some Elmer's glue and did 3 coats. 2 very thin coats, letting it dry in between, and then 1 final thick coat. Although on all 3 coats, I was very careful when going around this top edge between the shoe, the fabric-y part, and the rubbery part. Then using a combination of isopropyl alcohol and alcohol inks, I colored the base of the shoes. I did try and stay off the edges that I was planning to paint gold. It ended up not being all that important. The gold very much covered any mistakes, but I did spray a lot of isopropyl alcohol to make sure it stayed wet because I didn't want it quite this splotchy. I definitely wanted it more of a blended look. So I grabbed one of my blender brushes. This one's clean, and I used it to just blend everything together, all the different colors. The final color that you'll see here in just a second is the pearls alcohol ink. Once that I got it nicely blended and I did both shoes fully, I let it dry for about a night. And I took out my Cricut Maker. I cut out some leaves. Now, I was kind of trying to do leaves of Lothlorien, if you know anything about Lord of the Rings. And I just cut these off of some removable vinyl and used them to stick on. They were not that sticky, so it just had just enough tack to let me draw around it with some pencil. And I drew on a bunch of leaves to kind of look like somebody had taken the leaves, sewn them all together to make a fabric. That was what I was going for, at least, and it worked out perfectly. I did place some of the leaves on the back very strategically to make it look like they were planning on making shoes. Next, I took some fabric medium and some acrylic paint. I mixed the acrylic paint and the fabric medium to make fabric paint in my very specific color that I was trying to get, a slightly teal green, which I was super happy with. Next, I'm going to start painting the negative. So I really want to use this as the fade, the background, the shading, to make it look like the leaves are on top of each other. So I'm doing a line of the strict paint, and then I'm going to pull some water in with it and blend out to get a little bit of shading. So here you'll see that blend. This has water on it as well as the paint, and I'm just getting a little bit of a fade. It comes together beautifully. And I also added lines on the leaves. You didn't really see that, but I did that as well. Next, I took this brown marker, which is a fabric paint pen. If you see any markers, except for the black one, they're all paint pens. and I outlined each leaf twice, as well as added these little, it's supposed to look like threads, and I covered those twice. Now, after that had all fully dried, I came back in and used alcohol ink on the stretchy bits. That's the only thing I did on the stretchy bits. I didn't paint anything on top of it, nothing else. I'm coming in with this fabric marker that's gold. I use a couple different fabric markers. It makes it easy, and the gold turned out perfect. And I just covered a couple different areas that I wanted highlighted, especially where it had 2 stitching lines. Just anywhere there was 2 stitching lines, I covered that in gold, and I ended up doing 2 coats just to make sure it was very opaque. Once I let everything dry and I sat and looked at it, I was really happy with where it was going, but I didn't feel like the leaves had quite enough definition. They were kind of blending into each other. So I took this very thin black pen. It's a pigment ink pen, and I just drew around the brown outline of the shoes. You can see the shoe on the left have a lot more definition. I felt like the gold was a little bit too intense. I wanted to bring it back and make it look a little bit more lived in, a little bit more used. So I used another copper paint pen and just added a little bit of distressing. You'll see how quick and easy that went on. I didn't even do 2 coats of this, just what you're seeing here. On the bottom, you can see the distressed, and on the top, you can see the perfectly clean. I think the distressed just makes it look more worn and lived in. The final paint pen that I bought was this gold shimmer, and I wanted to use it. I don't know that this was necessary, but I added some gold shimmer to kind of make the leaves hopefully look a little bit shiny. The final thing I did was add the Mod Podge on top in 2 thin layers. I used water to thin out that Mod Podge. Once that had dried for about 24 hours, I came in and pulled off all of the Elmer's glue. It worked perfectly. It took probably 5 minutes to take off. It didn't come off all in one piece, but it was super easy to take off, even though it took just a little bit of time. Here I am wearing them. And then some pictures of these super cute shoes that are a little bit ridiculous, but I'm super excited and will wear them quite often. I think they're really fun, and I'm super excited to get to wear them. I've only wore them for about, an hour around my house so far, but they're just so fun, and I'm just so excited about them. I think they turned out great. The next and final project for our Enchanted Forest was this skirt. I messed up when I did the back. I cut it really wide, which I wanted to. I used all the excess fabric. I cut everything else out first. And I wanted to, rather than gather it, cartridge pleat it. So that's what you'll see me doing here. But I, of course, messed up the first time and did not get the right center. So here I'm redoing it, and I've clearly marked what is center. To do the cartridge pleating, you just have to do one side as a Z, and here you can see I have that as the left, and then the other side, here you can see that as the right, and S. So left is S, right is Z, and it just makes this beautiful pleat. And I go ahead and I just do SZ, SZ, SZ pleats or folds across this whole garment. I'm using a 1-inch measure. It takes it from 3 inches down to 1 inch, and I think it just turned out really cute. But I did take my time. Since I had to redo this, I did recut out this top kind of yoke piece. I cut it a little wide. I didn't really need to do that, but what I did need to do is add some height, because I used my serger when I first sewed it up and cut down some of the fabric. So to make sure I had enough length, I did add a little bit of length to that yoke piece. But it was fine, and all I had to do is match up the centers. I took some time to do that, and I just made sure I pinned everything very carefully. Sewed it all up. I tend to do, especially with fabrics like this, use both my regular sewing machine with just a straight stitch, and then I serge the edges. And then for this one, I really wanted it strong. I was pretty sure I was going to really love this skirt, so I also top stitched down the seam allowances. The sewing went really quick and easy once I hadn't messed everything up in the folding process. Here you can see me ironing down the seam allowances. Ironing is one of the most critical steps in sewing. Always remember to iron. After this, I do add that top stitching. Ironing, it does two things. It releases some of the tension from that thread. It also blends the thread into the fiber of the fabric, kind of almost making the fabric one with the thread and the other fabric. It's just a really important step. It trains the fabric how to fall and how it needs to sit. So from here, I sewed the side seams together, and there was a little issue there. Apparently, for some unknown reason, the side seams didn't quite match up. So once I sewed it with just my regular sewing machine, I come back and I true up the edges. I was a little disappointed in this. I would have much rather it went to the full length. I think the front, here you can see the front was a little bit longer, and I wish that I'd gotten that right. I'm not sure why it didn't work, because the pattern that I used to cut this skirt has always given me the same same sides, so I don't know. I'll have to go back and double check that, but I just trued up the edges. When I wear it, there is a little bit of a curve up on the side, so that kind of sucks, but overall, it was super easy to finish from there. I did add shorts, so it's actually technically a skort as opposed to a skirt, but it looks really cute. I ironed everything here. I've done everything except for put the elastic in at the top, and you'll see that in just a second. I think this skirt came out really cute. I'm not wearing it, but here you can kind of see it close enough. The only other issue I had is I put the elastic channels in after I sewed it together, and there was just a little bit of a gap. Thanks so much for joining me today. Make sure to come back to see my Independence Day decorations and all my Independence Day crafts.